We are always thinking technology. One guy who dreams about technology in his sleep, Matt Dickerson. How are you, Matt?
You have been sitting there beside my bed, waking me up, just listening to what I dream about, haven't you, Chris?
Now, Joe Biden looks like he might be the new president of the United States. The fireworks was quite amazing. How was that created, Matt?
Yeah, they were pretty cool, actually. I mean, fireworks have been a little bit on the nose lately, just not environmentally sensitive. So people have gone away from fireworks a little bit. But the fireworks after Joe Biden's victory speech were pretty impressive. And they were mainly made up of a light show from drones. And so they spelled out things in the sky. They had Biden, they had USA, they had a map of the United States. So it was all pretty cool. And I remember seeing it going, wow, I wonder how they do that. So I researched it a bit further. And they have a swarm of drones. And they've basically got little LED lights on them. And a bit like the old sparklers in the old days, Chris, when you'd wave a sparkler in the air and it'd map out something, you'd try and draw your name in it. It just leaves that little bit of residue light in the air. And that's exactly how these drones work. They have the LED lights, they move around in certain programmed sequences and they spell out different things, and they're all pretty impressive. And you can just imagine the complexity of having a number of drones in the air at the same time, all flying around. You can imagine pilots trying to do that. Well, pilots couldn't do it. Human pilots just aren't good enough to be able to do that. So it's all run by computers. It's got GPS systems on each of the individual drones, and they're set to a pre-programmed sequence, but they don't want them running into each other. There's nothing worse than a fireworks display with drones running into each other. But you might think it might be made up of a few drones, 2 or 3 or whatever it might be, but those sort of light shows have normally got anywhere from, say, 50 drones up to thousands. In fact, the world record was held by Intel. They had a couple of thousand drones up in the air. But this year, just only a month or so ago, a company in China broke Intel's world record of 2,066 simultaneous drones. They had 3,051 drones in the air. And I actually haven't been able to find footage of that one, but I'm keen to see the footage of what that sort of display looked like with all those drones in the air.
And of course, there's no accidents because it's all done by the computer.
Yeah, and again, the only thing I can think of, Chris, is maybe a big wind gust might come along and move those drones around. But modern drones are pretty impressive. Even in a strong wind, they pretty much stay exactly where they're meant to go. So, yeah, I can imagine that with 3,051 drones, the complexity might be higher, but presumably the accidents would still be zero.
And Matt, what is the latest technology announced by the New South Wales government to try and keep COVID-19 in check?
Hey, this is going to be a real challenge, I think, Chris. From the 23rd of November, it's going to be compulsory for all hospitality venues across the state to have QR code sign-in systems. Now, most pubs and cafes and restaurants you go to at the moment have got some form of contact tracing. They've got a bit of paper there, you write your name down on it, or you've got a QR code to scan in. But from the 23rd of November, that QR code is going to be compulsory. I do have a question about whether it has to be compulsory for a patron. In other words, if I turn up to a restaurant and I don't own a smartphone or I don't have my phone with me and I can't scan a QR code, I'm not capable or my technology is not capable, am I still allowed in? I haven't been able to find out an answer to that one. Logic would say the hospitality place could still have a piece of paper and a pen, but the fact they've made QR codes compulsory means maybe the only way you'll be able to get into one of those places if you've got a device capable of scanning a QR code. It is interesting. People have got their own range of QR code programs out there. The New South Wales government has got their Service New South Wales app, which you can use as well. So establishments have got to decide which type of QR code scanning they use, but there won't be a choice anymore as to whether they do it or not. It's going to be, yes, you have to do it, and then choose the individual tool that you'll use.
We are talking technology with Matt Dickerson. And Matt, this week the competition heats up in the console wars. Who will win the latest round, PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X?
Well, if you go on the last round, PlayStation was a clear winner. But that doesn't mean it's going to win this round. So it's pretty exciting this week because, as you said, the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X both come out this week. They're new versions of those. If we look at the last round, PlayStation 4 sold an incredible 112.4 million consoles. Nintendo Switch was second with 63 million and Xbox One in third place with 52.8 million. But obviously Microsoft is hoping to change that around with the new versions of these. They would like to knock off PlayStation and be the number one. Whether they will or not will depend upon how their consoles are received by the public. And I suppose it comes down to more than just the hardware now. It's really about the software, the games that you're able to play on there. And one major difference, Chris, is the Xbox direction, if you like, is all around a subscription model. So you will subscribe to your gaming console and you'll be able to get various games that are available via subscription, whereas PlayStation has still got the more traditional model, you might call it, where you go out and buy the individual game. So I think that will be the deciding factor more so than the actual power of the PlayStations. Microsoft are claiming their PlayStation is more powerful. Both of them do ultra high definition, they do 4K, they do incredible frame rates. So the quality of what you see is incredible from both of them. But in my opinion, that Xbox Game Pass may be the secret to Microsoft trying to maybe not get ahead of PlayStation, but reduce that gap to the PlayStation.
And Victoria is about to become the number one in the Southern Hemisphere, not with COVID-19, but with some important infrastructure. What's that going to be?
Yeah, we don't want to talk about Victoria and COVID-19 as little as possible, but they'll be the home of the largest battery in the Southern Hemisphere. And so they're following the South Australian lead. Obviously, it's a large battery South Australia installed some time ago, a couple of years ago now. But this battery will be twice the size of the battery at the Hornsdale Power Reserve in South Australia. It's 450 megawatt hours. So that's got enough energy to power about 500,000 homes for 1 hour. Obviously, the idea is not to just power 500,000 homes for 1 hour. It's really about making sure you've got that flexibility in the grid so that if you do have any power interruptions, you do have a lack of power for any period of time, you've got the battery able to kick in and provide that power for the network. Now, the government there is talking about not only will this provide better reliability in the network, which seems fairly obvious to me, but it's also going to drive down electricity prices. And that becomes a little bit harder to understand how that works. But when they looked at what's happened over in South Australia, it certainly has been a large driver of the reduction in electricity prices. And I suppose mainly by the ability to have more renewable energy on the network with that backup of the battery, that then allows you to reduce that electricity price. So exciting for Victoria. South Australia is going ahead. New South Wales seems to be dragging the chain around either battery or renewable technology.
And Matt, who is winning the vacuum tube transport system race? Virgin Hyperloop or SpaceX Hyperloop?
Well, until the last week, Chris, I would have said SpaceX was in the lead. They had some trials, they'd had some small competitions, and Elon Musk always talks things up. I often refer to him as the Thomas Edison of talking up technology. He always makes these grand promises that it's all going to happen tomorrow, and it takes a bit longer than that. But Virgin Hyperloop has just jumped ahead because they've just had their first trial with real passengers. And I'm not sure if I want to be some of the first passengers on one of these Hyperloops. The main problem I would see for passengers is the acceleration. And when they've only got a 500 metre test track, they want to obviously get up to speed and basically trial that out. But it's not very far to get up to speed when they're talking about reaching speeds maybe 1,000 kilometres an hour at some point down the future. Now, this test was only 15 seconds long. It only reached top speeds of 172 kilometres an hour. And the two people who were on the actual Virgin Hyperloop were two staff members, so they're probably not going to talk too negatively about it if they want to keep their jobs. But they talked about the fact that the acceleration wasn't too severe, it felt quite comfortable, they didn't feel sick after it, it all went according to plan. So this is kind of one of the first steps, if you like. The biggest step, I suppose, in the Hyperloop plans from both Virgin and SpaceX is really around the infrastructure. The same as we've got subways built for trains and we've got normal train lines and highways. If you're going to run with a Hyperloop, then you're going to have to build more infrastructure for that, and obviously that's going to be expensive. So it really needs to be a significant difference. With trains, there's a Japanese train that set the world record back in 2015 at 600 kilometres an hour, but they're talking about Hyperloop, as I mentioned before, getting up around 1,000 kilometres an hour. And when you think about plane flights, I mean, obviously 1,000 kilometres an hour, most planes are only getting up around that speed or a little bit less than that. So it starts to become pretty attractive. The big difference, of course, is you don't need to build a tunnel from Sydney to Melbourne to fly a train from Sydney to Melbourne. But a Hyperloop, you need that tunnel built.
All right, Matt, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much. We will see you on YouTube, and we will talk to you next week for more Tech Talk. Thanks, Matt.
Look forward to it, Chris. Thanks, mate.